The icy wind howled through the streets of Boston, Massachusetts on a gray February evening in 2025, cutting through the heavy coat of James Carter as he stumbled down a dimly lit alley in the Back Bay. His breath came in sharp gasps, each one a struggle against the invisible fire coursing through his veins. The sunfire toxin, a rare and ruthless condition that had haunted him since he was 24, was flaring again, threatening to burn him from the inside out. At 30, James was the youngest director of the Boston Institute of Technology, a genius in artificial intelligence whose work on advanced robotics promised to reshape the world. But none of that mattered now, as his vision blurred, his knees buckled, and the world tilted dangerously. He clutched the brick wall for support, his fingers scraping against the cold, rough surface. 5 years ago, a mysterious woman had saved him from a flare-up like this, her touch somehow cooling the inferno in his body. The doctors called it a miracle, tied to some ancient theory about a pure yin constitution counteracting his toxin. But she'd vanished without a trace, leaving James to chase a ghost, while the poison ticked down the years of his life. Across town in a cramped apartment in Roxbury, Emily Harper tucked her 4-year-old daughter Lily into bed, smoothing the girl's dark curls as she whispered a lullaby. Lily's small frame was frail, her skin pale from the lupus that drained her strength and racked up medical bills Emily could barely afford. A single mother at 28, Emily worked odd jobs, waitressing, tutoring, anything to keep the lights on, and Lily's treatments funded. Her marriage to Ryan Mitchell had been a mistake, ending in betrayal when she discovered his affairs and his cruelty toward Lily. Tonight, though, Emily had a rare moment of peace, watching Lily's chest rise and fall, her daughter's soft snores, a small victory against the disease. But peace was fleeting. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "We need to talk. Meet me at the diner on Tremont. Now." Emily's stomach twisted. Ryan had been dodging child support for months, and his sudden demand reeked of trouble. She kissed Lily's forehead, called her neighbor to babysit, and headed out into the cold, her worn boots slipping on the icy sidewalk. James's world was narrowing to a pinprick of light when he heard footsteps echoing in the alley. His heart pounded not just from the toxin, but from the fear that his enemies, rival tech firms, foreign agents, anyone who wanted the secrets locked in his mind, had found him in this vulnerable moment. He'd been careless leaving the Institute late after a breakthrough on their latest AI robot codenamed Starlight. The project was worth billions, and James knew too many people wanted him out of the picture. He tried to stand to call for help, but his voice was a rasp, drowned by the wind. Then a figure appeared at the mouth of the alley, a woman, her silhouette framed by the streetlight's glow. "Hey, are you okay?" Her voice was sharp with concern, cutting through the fog in his head. She knelt beside him, her hands steady as she checked his pulse. "You're burning up. We need to get you to a hospital." Emily didn't know why she'd taken this shortcut through the alley, only that it shaved 10 minutes off her walk to the diner. She'd seen plenty of drunks and vagrants in Boston's back streets, but this man was different. His tailored coat and sharp features screamed wealth, but his face was contorted in pain, his skin fever-hot despite the freezing air. She hesitated, her instincts warring between helping a stranger and avoiding trouble. But then he grabbed her wrist, his grip weak but desperate, and whispered, "Please, help me." Something in his voice, raw, almost pleading, made her stay. She pulled off her scarf, pressing it to his forehead, and to her shock, his trembling eased his breathing, slowing. "What's happening to you?" she murmured, half to herself. His eyes, a piercing gray, locked onto hers. You're doing it," he gasped. "The heat, It's fading. James couldn't believe it. The fire in his blood, the agony that had driven him to the edge of consciousness, was receding under her touch. It was just like 5 years ago when that unknown woman had held him through a flare-up at a seedy motel on the outskirts of Boston. He'd been drugged, betrayed by a colleague who'd sold him out to a rival firm, and she'd appeared like an angel, her cool hands pulling him back from the brink. Now this woman, petite, with dark hair spilling from a knit cap and eyes full of wary compassion, was doing the same. "Who are you?" He managed his voice hoarse. She frowned, pulling back slightly. "Emily. Emily Harper. And you need a doctor, not questions." But James wasn't listening. His mind raced, piecing together the impossible. Could she be the one? The odds were slim, but the way his body responded to her was unmistakable. Emily helped him to his feet, her arm around his waist as they staggered out of the alley. She didn't know why she was doing this. Ryan was waiting, and every minute she spent here was a minute Lily was without her. But the man's condition was dire and her conscience wouldn't let her walk away. They reached a nearby coffee shop, its neon sign flickering in the dusk, and she eased him into a booth. "Stay here," she said, pulling out her phone to call 911. But he grabbed her hand again, gentler this time. "No hospitals. They can't help. Just stay with me a minute." His voice was steadier now, but his eyes held a mix of gratitude and suspicion. "Why are you helping me?" Emily bristled. "Because you looked like you were dying. You're welcome, by the way." She stood to leave, but his next words stopped her cold. 5 years ago, February 5th, 2020. Were you at a motel on Route 1? The question hit Emily like a slap. February 5th, 2020 was her wedding night with Ryan. It was supposed to be romantic, a cheap motel room because they couldn't afford more, but Ryan had acted strange, insisting she meet him at a specific address. When she'd arrived, he wasn't there, just an older man who'd ushered her into a room where a stranger lay delirious with fever. She'd stayed out of pity, holding his hand until he stabilized, then fled before dawn, ashamed and confused. Ryan had brushed it off, saying it was a mix-up, but the memory had always gnawed at her. Now, this man James, he'd said his name was, stared at her like she held the key to his survival. "How do you know about that?" she demanded, her voice shaking. James leaned forward, his intensity unnerving. "Because I was that man, and you saved my life." Emily's mind reeled. She wanted to deny it, to run from this stranger who seemed to know too much. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Ryan, impatient. She ignored it, her focus on James. "You're wrong. I don't know you. I was with my husband that night." James's eyes darkened. "Your husband? What's his name, Emily?" Hesitated, then muttered, "Ryan Mitchell." The name seemed to spark something in James, a flash of anger. "Ryan Mitchell," he repeated almost to himself. He was working with a man named Dr. Ellis back then. Did he ever mention him? Emily shook her head, her unease growing. What does this have to do with anything? James took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The toxin was dormant for now, but he knew it would flare again. He needed answers, and Emily was his only lead. 5 years ago, I was betrayed. Someone drugged me, left me in that motel to die. A woman saved me, and I've been searching for her ever since. I think it was you. Emily laughed a bitter sound. You think I'm some kind of savior? I'm just a mom, trying to keep my kid alive. You've got the wrong person. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. Ryan had always been cagey about that night, and the money he'd suddenly had afterward, enough for a down payment on their old apartment, had never made sense. Before James could press further, the coffee shop door swung open, and Ryan Mitchell himself strode in, his face a mask of irritation. "Emily? What the hell? I've been waiting for 20 minutes." He stopped short, noticing James. "Who's this?" Emily stood, her hands clenching into fists. "None of your business, Ryan." "What do you want?" Ryan's eyes flicked between them, a smirk curling his lips. "You're moving up in the world, huh? Ditching me for some rich guy?" James rose, his height and presence dwarfing Ryan's wiry frame. "Leave her alone," he said, his voice low but firm. Ryan laughed, but there was a nervous edge to it. "You don't know who you're messing with, pal." "Emily, we're not done. You owe me." Emily's heart pounded as Ryan's words echoed her worst fears. He'd been harassing her for weeks, demanding money and threatening to take Lily away. "I owe you nothing," she snapped. "You cheated, you lied, and you left us with nothing. Stay away from my daughter." Ryan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You think you can just walk away? I know things, Emily. Things about that night, 5 years ago. You want the truth to come out." Emily froze, her blood running cold. What did he know? Before she could respond, James stepped between them. "Back off, Mitchell, or you'll deal with me." The tension in the coffee shop was palpable, customers glancing nervously at the standoff. Emily's mind raced, torn between fear and a strange sense of safety with James nearby. She didn't understand why he cared, why he was protecting her, but his presence gave her courage. "Ryan, we're done. Don't contact me again." Ryan's smirk faded, replaced by a scowl. "You'll regret this, both of you." He turned and stormed out, leaving Emily trembling. James touched her arm, his voice gentle. "You okay?" She nodded, though she wasn't sure. "I need to get back to Lily." James insisted on driving her home, his sleek black car a stark contrast to the rundown streets of Roxbury. As they drove, he explained his condition in halting words. The sunfire toxin, the need for a pure yin woman, the Institute's high-stakes projects that made him a target. Emily listened, half disbelieving, half fascinated. When they reached her apartment, she hesitated at the door. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me?" James met her gaze, his expression earnest. "I think you're the one who saved me before, and I think you can do it again. Marry me, Emily. I'll cover Lily's medical bills, give you anything you need. In return, you help me survive." Emily stared at him, stunned. Marriage to a stranger. It was insane, yet the desperation in his eyes mirrored her own. Lily's treatments were bankrupting her, and Ryan's threats loomed large. But could she trust this man who seemed to know too much about her past? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with a voicemail from her neighbor. "Emily, Lily's running a fever. I'm taking her to the ER." Panic seized her, and James saw it. "Let's go," he said, already heading back to the car. "I'll get you to the hospital." At Boston, General Emily sat by Lily's bedside, her heart breaking as her daughter shivered under a thin blanket. James stood nearby, speaking quietly with the doctor. "It's a lupus flare," the doctor said. "We'll stabilize her, but long-term treatment will cost upwards of $500,000. Emily's breath caught the number, crushing her. James stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I'll cover it. Whatever she needs." Emily looked at him, tears in her eyes. "Why are you doing this?" He hesitated, then said, "Because I owe you, and because I can't lose you, not when I just found you." As the hospital lights buzzed overhead, Emily's mind churned. James's offer was a lifeline, but it came with strings tied to a past she didn't fully understand. Meanwhile, at the Boston Institute, Sarah Collins, James's ambitious assistant, watched the security footage of his encounter in the alley, her lips curling into a smile. She'd been waiting for a chance to take him down to claim his position and the Starlight Project for herself. And Emily Harper, with her secrets and vulnerabilities, was the perfect pawn. As Sarah dialed a number, her voice was cold. "Ryan, it's Sarah. We need to talk about your ex-wife." The fluorescent lights of the Boston Institute of Technology buzzed overhead as Emily Harper stood in the sleek glass-walled conference room, her palms sweaty, despite the air-conditioned chill. It was March 2025, a month since her impulsive marriage to James Carter, the Institute's director, and she still felt like an imposter among the polished scientists and cutting-edge tech. Her old college degree in computer engineering, once a source of pride, felt like a relic compared to the futuristic robotics projects surrounding her. James had insisted she join the Institute not just to stay close for his sunfire toxin flare-ups, but because he believed in her talent. Today was her first test, a presentation on the Starlight robot, a revolutionary AI designed to integrate with smart homes and assist with everything from childcare to security. Emily's job was to debug its voice recognition system, but as she glanced at the skeptical faces of the research team, her confidence wavered. Sarah Collins, James's assistant, leaned against the wall, her sharp eyes glinting with something Emily couldn't quite place. Disdain, maybe, or something darker. James stood at the head of the table, his gray suit crisp, despite the late nights he'd been pulling. The toxin had been quiet since their marriage, soothed by Emily's presence, but he knew it was a temporary reprieve. He watched her adjust her notes, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and felt a pang of guilt. Marrying her had been a calculated move. Her touch eased his pain, and he could fund Lily's lupus treatments, but the warmth in her eyes when she looked at him stirred something deeper, something he wasn't ready to name. "Emily's got the floor," he said, his voice steady, cutting through the room's murmurs. "She's identified a flaw in Starlight's speech processing. Let's hear her out." Emily took a deep breath, her voice steady despite her nerves. "The current algorithm struggles with multi-speaker environments." She began projecting a graph onto the screen. "It misinterprets overlapping voices as noise. I've written a patch that prioritizes primary voice patterns, improving accuracy by 40%. The room was silent. Then a senior engineer, Dr. Patel, nodded. "Impressive. Let's see it in action." As Emily ran the demo, Starlight's sleek humanoid form responded flawlessly to her commands, even with team members talking over each other. The room erupted in cautious applause, but Sarah's smile was tight, her fingers tapping her tablet. She'd been with the Institute for years, clawing her way up, and the idea of a former housewife stealing her spotlight was intolerable. Sarah had her own plans for Starlight and for James's downfall. She slipped out of the room, dialing a number she'd memorized weeks ago. "Ryan, it's Sarah. Your ex is making waves here. If you want to screw her over, now's the time." On the other end, Ryan Mitchell's voice was bitter. "What's in it for me? Emily's got that rich guy wrapped around her finger." Sarah's lips curled. "Money, revenge, and a chance to take down Carter. Meet me tonight." Back in Roxbury, Emily tucked Lily into bed, her daughter's small hand clutching a stuffed bunny. The hospital bills were paid thanks to James, but Lily's latest lupus flare had left her weak, her cheeks flushed even in sleep. Emily's heart ached as she brushed a curl from Lily's forehead. The marriage to James was supposed to be a transaction, her presence for his health, his money for Lily's survival, but every day spent with him blurred the lines. He'd been at the hospital with her last week holding her hand, as Lily slept his quiet strength, a contrast to Ryan's cruelty. Yet doubts gnawed at her. Was she just a means to an end for him? And why did he keep asking about that night 5 years ago, the one she barely remembered through a haze of fear and confusion? The next morning, Emily arrived at the Institute to find chaos. Starlight's prototype set for a critical demo to investors from Silicon Valley was malfunctioning, its circuits fried in a way that suggested sabotage. James's face was grim as he surveyed the damage, his team scrambling to assess the loss. "This could cost us billions," he muttered, his eyes meeting Emily's. "Any ideas?" She knelt beside the robot, her fingers tracing the charred wiring. "This wasn't an accident," she said quietly. "The cuts are too precise, like someone used a laser tool." James's jaw tightened. Who had access last night? Before Emily could answer, Sarah stepped forward, her voice smooth. Emily was working late on the voice patch. She was the last one in the lab. The accusation hung in the air, and Emily's stomach dropped. "I didn't touch the hardware," she protested, but Sarah's smile was predatory. "Then why's your access card logged at 11 p.m.? Emily's mind raced. She'd left at 9, exhausted after hours of coding. Someone had used her card or framed her. James's eyes searched hers, and for a moment she feared he'd believe Sarah. But he turned to the team. "Check the security footage. Now." The text scrambled, but Sarah's expression didn't waver. She'd already ensured the cameras were malfunctioning that night, a trick she'd learned from her contacts in a rival firm. As the team dispersed, James pulled Emily aside. "I trust you," he said, his voice low, "but we need to find out who's behind this." Emily nodded, her throat tight. "I think it's Sarah. She's been off since I started here." James's brow furrowed. "She's ambitious, but sabotage? That's a big leap." Emily wanted to argue, but her phone buzzed with a call from Lily's daycare. "Mom, I don't feel good." Lily's small voice whimpered. Emily's heart sank. "I'll be right there." At the daycare, Emily found Lily curled up, her fever spiking. She rushed her to Boston General, where the doctor's words were a gut punch, another flare. "She'll need a new treatment plan, and it's not cheap." Emily's savings were gone, and even James's payments couldn't keep up with the mounting costs. As she sat by Lily's bed, her phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Want to know what really happened 5 years ago? Meet me at the old warehouse on Pier 4. Alone." Emily's blood ran cold. The message felt like a trap, but the promise of answers about that night, the night that haunted her, the night Ryan had betrayed her, was too tempting. She called James, her voice shaking. "I need to check something. Can you stay with Lily?" He agreed without hesitation, arriving at the hospital in minutes, his presence calming her frayed nerves, and she took a cab to the waterfront. The warehouse was a hulking relic, its rusted doors creaking in the salty wind. Inside, Ryan waited, his smirk illuminated by a flickering bulb. "You're late," he sneered. Beside him stood Sarah, her arms crossed, a USB drive dangling from her fingers. "What's this?" Emily demanded, her voice steady despite her fear. Ryan stepped closer, his breath sour with cheap whiskey. "The truth. 5 years ago I sold you to some old guy named Dr. Ellis. He needed you for his boss, some sick bastard at the Institute. Guess who that was?" Emily's heart pounded. James Ryan laughed, a cruel sound. "Bingo! You were his cure, and I got $2 million for it." "You're welcome," Sarah cut, in her voice cold. "And now you're in my way. Quit the Institute, or this footage of you sabotaging Starlight goes public." Emily's mind reeled. Ryan's betrayal was worse than she'd imagined, and Sarah's threat could ruin her. But before she could respond, a crash echoed outside. James burst through the door, his face a mask of fury. "Get away from her!" He growled, his fist connecting with Ryan's jaw before the man could react. Sarah shrieked, dropping the USB drive, which Emily snatched up. "You're done," James said, his voice lethal as he turned to Sarah. "I checked the lab logs. You used Emily's card last night." Sarah paled, but Ryan lunged, a knife glinting in his hand. Emily acted on instinct, grabbing a pipe from the floor and swinging it at Ryan's arm, sending the knife clattering. James tackled him, pinning him down as Emily called 911. The police arrived, cuffing Ryan as he spat curses. Sarah slipped away in the chaos, but James's focus was on Emily. "You okay?" he asked, his hands gentle on her shoulders. She nodded, clutching the USB drive. "They set me up. And Ryan, he said you were the one that night." James's face darkened, but he didn't deny it. "I didn't know it was you," he said quietly. "Dr. Ellis arranged it. I was out of my mind with the toxin. But when I woke up, you were gone." Emily's eyes burned with tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked away, guilt etching his features. "I wasn't sure. And I didn't want to scare you." Back at the hospital, Lily was stable, her small hand gripping James's finger as he sat beside her. Emily watched them, her heart torn. James wasn't just her husband of convenience anymore. He was the man who'd rushed to her side, who'd fought for her. But the truth about that night 5 years ago changed everything. Had she been a pawn then as she felt now? As they left the hospital, James's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. "Ben, Sarah's gone rogue. She's meeting with a rival firm tonight. We need to act fast." James looked at Emily, his eyes resolute. "We'll fix this. Together." She nodded, a spark of determination igniting. Sarah and Ryan had underestimated her, but she wasn't just a single mom anymore. She was part of something bigger, and she'd fight for it, for Lily, for James, and for the truth.